who was the minority Republican leader in the United States Senate at that time.
Absolutely.
You have to acknowledge that. So I think if we're going to talk about this, we have to acknowledge all of the history that went along with that. And where we are today in America is trying to have the economic policies and the public policies so that all people can thrive. And if you're actually going to compare economic policies and public policies between the 45th president and the 46th president, it's without question they were better under the 45th.
Well, look, I mean,
so if you're going to examine today, hold on, but Abby, if you're going to examine today in America and where we're going as Americans, then you have to have the right set of economic policies and the right set of public policies. I mean, Abby, you've been interrupting me the entire interview. I'm just trying to have a conversation.
I'm going to interrupt.
Man, if you don't shut the f up.
What's going on, guys? So we got to talk about Trump deranged anchor Abby Phillip, works for CNN, aka Clown News Network. Okay, so she's trying her best to be as Trump deranged and the biggest gaslighter and propagandist as possible, but she's been failing miserably and not to outdo herself. She has another video where effectively the same thing happens, where she tries her best to be the best little propagandist, the best little puppet for the DNC that she can, but she fails. Okay, she doesn't stand a chance against the likes of MSNBC, people like Joy Reid, but she also doesn't even stand a chance against Republicans, because Byron Donalds comes on here and he cooks her on some propaganda that they have where they're saying this man was making some Jim Crow comments and he shouldn't have said that. And, you know, they try to blow up every little thing that they can that conservatives say, but of course give Democrats a pass on everything, like when Joe Biden said, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. But you don't see them really talking about that. Of course, they want to hold conservatives to the task, whether they're white, black, don't matter. And they try to push it even harder. They're like, wait a minute, you black? Are you support Republicans? You know, they look at you crazy, and it is so stupid and ridiculous. I can't wait to see Abby Phillip get cooked by Byron Donalds. Hope this man is the VP, because I think he got the sauce, and that sauce might be just that edge that Donald Trump needs to get a couple of these more minority voters going. But anyway, without further ado, let's get into it.
Good evening, I'm Abby Phillip in New York, and I want to get right to it tonight. One of Donald Trump's vice presidential contenders, Congressman Byron Donalds, he made some comments that has a lot of you talking and a lot of Democrats fired up. I'm going to speak with him live in just a couple of minutes.
Why would Democrats not, when are Democrats not fired up about something some conservatives said? They never pay attention to what Democrats say, and they make excuses and they gaslight. But the conservatives say something, it's the end of the freaking world, the sky is falling, the world is about to end in the apocalypse.
But here are the original remarks. They were made as a part of a pitch to black voters in Philadelphia. And I want you to hear it in its full context. Listen.
I grew up with my mom. My dad and my mom, things didn't work out. As an adult, I look at my father and I say, bro, I don't know what happened, but you my father and I love you.
Wow.
I don't know what happened. I wasn't there.
Wow.
But I'm gonna tell you this, growing up, the one thing I knew I wanted to do, and this is not about my father, this is about what I wanted to do, is I wanted to be a father to myself.
Wow.
And so one of the things that's actually happening in our culture, which you're now starting to see in our politics, is the reinvigoration of black families with younger black men and black women. And that is also helping to breed the revival of a black middle class in America. You see, during Jim Crow, the black family was together.
That's right.
During Jim Crow, more black people were not just conservative, because black people always have been conservative-minded, but more black people voted conservatively. And then H.E.W., Lyndon Johnson, and then you go down that road, and now we are where we are.
I just want to go ahead and reiterate everything Byron Donalds just said is factual. Point blank, period. Factual. So what's the problem? Let's keep going.
What's happened in America the last 10 years, and I say it because it's my contemporaries, it's Wesley's contemporaries, you're starting to see more black people be married in homes, raising kids. It's when you home with your wife raising your kids, and then you look at the world, you're saying, now wait a minute, time out. This does not look right. How can I get something to my kids? It goes back to the conversation of generational wealth. Not just having a job. generational wealth.
Now, we should note that many Democrats who jumped on Donalds today claimed that he said that blacks were, quote, better off. As you heard there.
Which he did not say that they were better off as it relates to. They're basically saying Jim Crow and blacks were literally oppressed. Like, that was a great time. That's basically how they're implying that is what he said. No, he's saying that black families were together during Jim Crow. That's what he said.
He didn't use those exact words in the clip. But the congressman joins me now to talk about that. Congressman, thank you for being here. I want to just focus on really the substance of what you were saying or trying to say in that clip. What did you mean by black families were more together during Jim Crow?
Bro, like, this is okay. I'm gonna let Donalds answer. I ain't gonna say nothing.
Frankly, what that is about the empirical fact that before the Great Society, before Lyndon Johnson's policies, there was more black families united. The marriage rate in black America was significantly higher before the Great Society. The period of time that coincides with that, obviously, is Jim Crow era. And then after the Great Society, the marriage rate in the black community plummeted significantly.
Fell off a cliff.
The Great Society is a part of that reason, not completely, but it's definitely a part of that. And what you're seeing right now in America is a reformation of black families in America. That's a good thing, not only for the black community and for black families, but it's also a good thing for the country. So
what was the point of tying together the black family and Jim Crow specifically? I mean, Jim Crow, as you know.
It's literally just, bro, he literally mentioned the era. It's a time period. It's when you look at history books, they literally describe it as the Jim Crow era. It's a time period, guys. Like, give me a break.
Was a period of racial segregation, of racial terror. Why would you make that connection?
All I was doing was referring to the time periods when you talk about the historical timelines in America and coinciding with black families and what the marriage rate in black families are. The overarching point is obviously talking about what polling shows today, that about 25% of the black vote, depending on what poll you're looking at, is leaning towards supporting Republicans and supporting President Trump. The corollary to that is that when you're in a family unit, husband and wife, living together, working together, thriving together, you're raising your kids, your thought process is now talking about building generational wealth. What am I leaving to my children? What kind of communities do I want my children to come up in? What are the educational opportunities? What's going on with the economy? How does, and then to a broader level, how does foreign policy and all these other public policy issues flow into that? And so when you compare the terrible agenda of Joe Biden and what that's done to families in America, coinciding with the fact that you are seeing a reformation of black families in America today, which is an absolutely wonderful thing and needs to continue. My view is it also coincides with a more conservative leaning and a more conservative mindset politically in those families.
One thing I really want to just get you to address is there were a lot of people who heard what you had to say, and a lot of them are offended by the idea that you would repeat Jim Crow.
Bro, who cares, bro? Who cares if they're offended? I mean, we're talking about a bunch of snowflakes who are offended by anything. I mean, we're talking about people who are offended by the bloodbath comment. People who believe the people on both sides comment. I mean, these people believe anything. They're offended by anything. Who cares?
3 times in your comments, as if to suggest that that was a time period because that black families were, in your words, together, because, in your words, black people were not just more conservative, they voted more conservatively. That's a good thing. I mean, it sounds like nostalgia. Do you regret using that time frame as a reference?
This is crazy.
Nobody ever made nostalgia. That was never the point. It wasn't even about that. So now I'm going to get my backup is, I didn't say that. I didn't even insinuate that. That is where the media and, yes, Hakeem Jeffries and a lot of other people are taking
What exactly didn't you insinuate?
No, back up.
I'm just trying to understand what you're saying. What didn't
Let the man talk and maybe you'll understand, Abby.
The premise of your question, I did not insinuate. That is what people are trying to weave into what I said. What I said is crystal clear. It's on my social media. Go to @Byron Donalds on X. You can see the full clip. Abby, I appreciate you playing the full clip. What you are dealing with right now is a political environment where now anything I might say or any major surrogate might say is going to be twisted into the lens of race. That was never the point, not the idea whatsoever.
I mean, just to clarify my questioning of you, I mean, I understand that this idea that you said it was better, you didn't use the words better. But when you talk about that time period, you're suggesting that because the black family was together, they were better off than they are now.
See, this is the problem, Abby.
So are you saying that that's not the case? That the black family was not better off when they were, in your words, together?
Abby, let me put it to you like this.
In the Jim Crow era.
Let's agree on something. I am, obviously one of the better communicators in the Republican Party. I know how to put words together.
Facts.
I do it very, very often. So I'm not going to say something that I do not agree with. What America is seeing right now, especially Black America, is the gaslighting that unfortunately does happen in politics, where you take my comments and you want to weave your own political viewpoint into what I said. What I said is very clear.
I asked you to explain because I wanted to what I want to undo is understand what you're saying here. Because if you're making a comparison, you're saying the black family was together then, they're not together now, and you're using that to try to say that things are bad now. Well, first of all, let me just to set the table here. By pretty much every available measure, black families, black individuals in this country are better off today than they were during Jim Crow. Would you agree with that?
I mean, black wealth has plummeted, so I'm just gonna put that out there. And that's actually all the way up until now. Like, black wealth right now is terrible. I mean, so black people make more money, but in terms of actual wealth building and development is terrible. And that's irrespective is the Jim Crow era. I'm just talking about on the whole. Hell, since the 70s, 80s, 90s, black wealth has been decreasing. It has not been increasing.
Abby, of course I would. I'm not making that point, and this is the problem. What the Democrats, what Hakeem Jeffries did on the House floor, what Jamie Harrison, what the president of the NAACP, what the Biden campaign, because they're the ones who started this, it was really the Biden campaigns who were trying to cherry pick everything. They're trying to twist my words into saying something. I never said that. What I was talking about was specifically black families. And the point that black families being together is a great thing for the black community. And you do have to acknowledge the empirical fact that before Lyndon Johnson's policies and the welfare state that was created in the United States, I'm not talking about good, bad, or indifferent.
But what about
black families were, black marriage rates were significantly higher.
Well, what about
They're rising
things that
again in America. That's a good thing. We should celebrate that.
What about other things that may have contributed to the, maybe the decline in marriage rates, which, by the way, is not unique to black families. That's happening actually across racial groups. But what about other things? I mean, what about
black families in America have the lowest rate of marriage. So I guess, I don't know if Byron Donalds is going to mention that, but they have by far the lowest rate of marriage in America and the most single mothers in America. So, I mean, we'll see if he mentions that.
Redlining. Do you think that had an effect on the black family? What about mass incarceration? What about the war on drugs, which was pushed by a Republican president whose advisor said it was specifically to target black people? What about all of those things?
Look, if you want to talk about redlining and a lot of the other policies that were put forward, quite frankly, by the Democrat Party, if you're going to go back to Jim Crow, because Jim Crow was Democrat policies.
Well,
that's what that was.
I know that you
know. Now you don't want to let him talk again. Why you keep interrupting every time you ask him a question and he's trying to, bro?
Let me just, I have to correct on a factual point here. I know that you know that the Democratic Party and the Republican Party of today are ideologically not what they were during Jim Crow. You know that, Congressman. So to suggest that, the Democrats of 1920 are the same ideologically as the Democrats of today is inaccurate. So just, you can continue, but I wanted to...
That's not totally true, Abby, and I think if we want to have that conversation about the policy positions between Republicans and Democrats, we can have that conversation, but
one of the other
Abby, do you want to have a conversation?
One of the other things,
I'm trying to understand how you want this interview to go.
Since you brought it up on the conservative thing, the other thing that you said was black people voted more conservatively. Were you talking about them voting for Republicans
In part, yeah, because that's just an empirical fact. That's what we know that did happen. And the only corollary that I am making is that when families are together, and now you're trying to find a way for you to build wealth within your family unit, you're thinking about public policy in a myriad of ways. Because at the end of the day, you want your children to be able to stand on your shoulders. I was very, very fortunate. My mother was able to build a platform for me to be able to stand on and to be able to achieve. Same for my sisters. I'm a very blessed individual because of that. My only point is that when you have a family unit, husband and wife living together, striving together, grinding together, raising children together, you start thinking about public policy in a myriad of ways. And my belief is that dynamic allows people to start thinking about public policy in a much more conservative way as opposed to a much more progressive way. That's my point.
That might be, I mean, I think you're a Republican, so you're entitled to that opinion. But I think what people are taking issue with is you made a couple of statements of fact. And one of the things I was asking you about whether you were talking about Black people voting for Republicans. You know, in the time period that you're talking about, the LBJ time period, they started voting for Democrats. And the reason is because of civil rights, because a Democratic president was passing bills that gave them rights. The Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act of 1965, the Housing Fairness Act. So do you acknowledge that when Democrats, Black voters vote for Democrats, it's actually because there's a history there. There's a reason that they voted for Democrats in that time period, not because they were just getting welfare money.
Abby, let me be clear. I don't deny that. I think it's also important for the record to be clear that you had the vast majority of Democrats in the Senate were filibustering the 64 Civil Rights Act led by Robert Byrd, who, by the way, was a mentor to Joe Biden when he went into the United States Senate. So if we're going to talk about the history, let's talk about it clearly and completely. Republicans have been the ones who were pushing not just the 64 Civil Rights Act, but the other 4 Civil Rights Acts that occurred before 1964.
Look,
that's the history of the country.
I'm not denying that. There were Southern Democrats who opposed.
Can I finish my point? All I'm asking is to finish my point.
On the facts here, there were Southern Democrats who opposed these civil rights bills. But a majority of them voted for it. It was also led by a Democratic president. So you acknowledge that Southern Democrats were recruited into the Republican Party in the time period after that. So when you talk about this, you just have to acknowledge that there's been a switch happening in the two parties. It's not the same today as it was during Jim Crow. And so when you say that Black people voted conservativly, that actually doesn't really tell us anything. It just tells us that they voted for the Republican Party, which is a different thing than it is for today.
Are we also going to acknowledge that how the 64 Civil Rights Act actually got through the U.S. Senate was because of also the leadership of Senator Everett Dirksen, who was the minority Republican leader in the United States Senate at that time.
Absolutely.
You have to acknowledge that. So I think if we're going to talk about this, we have to acknowledge all of the history that went along with it.
I wasn't suggesting
and I think that's a good thing. We should have that historical conversation.
I wasn't suggesting.
Anytime this dude has a valid point, she just tries to talk over him. And this is like this has got to be the most annoying that she's ever been. And it's no wonder that these people have lost all respect. Nobody, like, a lot of people just call them just fake news. I call them fake news. I call them crap news network, clown news network. Like, it's gotten to the point of being totally ridiculous. This man can't say 2 freaking words without her interrupting him. She literally will ask him a question. He starts talking, and whenever he starts, especially making a good and valid counterpoint to what she's saying, then all of a sudden she's going to talk over him. It's getting ridiculous.
The congressional Republicans necessarily were the stumbling block for any of this legislation. All I'm saying is that when you ask, why do Black people vote for Democrats, you have to acknowledge that that is one of the main reasons. I want to just ask one other thing, though, Congressman. It's striking to me that this conversation about the family, about who is the recipient of government benefits, about who was affected by Lyndon B. Johnson's Great Society, why is it that that conversation only happens to Black people? When white people are on welfare, when white people are recipients of these programs too, when white people have broken families as well. Why is this a message that is always directed at Black Americans?
Black America has the most broken down and destroyed family for a number of reasons. So I think it's worthwhile to point out that specific group, especially as a Black person, if you want to see it get better. If you never want to see it get better, then just focus on all these other groups. Focus on white people. If you always want everything to just stay crappy and garbage in the Black community, just focus on white people. Talk about other people. Don't talk about Black people. Don't look in the mirror. Don't resolve any issues within your community, your family. Focus on other people's family. Focus on migrants. Like, we just focus on everything else. How about you focus on your own house? You ever heard that saying? Focus on your own home, not everybody else's home. And if your own home looks terrible, I'd say maybe you should focus on that.
I didn't say that at all. I think that's what you're insinuating. But let me.
I mean, that's what you did. You were trying to recruit Black voters
Abby,
for
if you're
President Trump.
am I allowed to answer the question? Let me step into that. Okay, a couple of things. Yes, Lyndon Johnson's Great Society, if you look at the empirical data, was destructive in part, and I said even in my comments yesterday in Philadelphia, in part to Black families throughout the United States of America. You also had some of the very damaging policies around the criminal justice system. The 94 crime bill, which was authored by Joe Biden and brought by Joe Biden. Yes, you had the war on drugs that was also very damaging to Black communities. All those things have contributed to that. And where we are today in America is trying to have the economic policies and the public policies so that all people can thrive. And if you're actually going to compare economic policies and public policies between the 45th president and the 46th president, it's without question they were better under the 45th.
Well, look, I mean,
so if you're going to examine today,
hold on,
but Abby, if you're going to examine today in America and where we're going as Americans, then you have to have the right set of economic policies and the right set of public policies. I mean, Abby, you've been interrupting me the entire interview. I'm just trying to have a conversation.
I'm going to interrupt you on the facts, Congressman. The Black
look, okay, the authority on the facts is apparently Abby Phillip and Caitlin Collins and whoever the hell else is at CNN. This is all that these people do. They literally spew whatever they want to spew, and then when somebody's schooling them on facts, then they don't want to hear none of that. They just want to do interruptions and cut to the next point, cut the interview short, whatever they want to do. This is how these people operate.
Unemployment rate was the lowest in American history under Joe Biden just last year. The poverty rate for Black people is the lowest under Joe Biden. So you cannot
you know that they don't count dislocated workers, right? I mean, this is something that actually is usually never counted. But here's the thing. I want to put y'all on game for those of y'all who don't know this. They don't actually count whatever they feel like is going to make the number worse. They can change the number and how it's calculated at any point in time. Okay, so don't sit up here and think for a second when somebody has a padded stat and you cannot see evidence. If you can't see evidence of it, usually it's a lie. Okay, I'll put it that way. Like when people say how great this economy is, Abby Phillip is one of those people who's mentioned that plenty of times, but you're not seeing actual direct evidence of that in your life. Ask yourself, are you just crazy, or is Abby Phillip gaslighting you along with Joe Biden and the rest of the radical left?
Say empirically for Black people that from a financial level, things were better under Trump. There are other ways that you can make this case, but you cannot say that.
Actually, let me respond to that. Because the economic reality is that even though unemployment might be lower, wages adjusted for inflation, which is the true measure of getting ahead in America, that has been bad under Joe Biden. It was significantly better under Donald Trump because we did not have massive inflation and people were making more money, which means you're taking more money home, which means you can begin to prepare for your family, which means you can start to prepare and begin thinking about ideas of getting assets, accumulating assets, and generating wealth. Joe Biden's economy, Bidenomics, like he likes to call it, I know they don't using the word anymore, that's been destructive of so many families in our country, including Black families in our country. That is the empirical economic fact that we have to acknowledge before this election
inflation,
cycle.
I 100% agree with you, is a problem for all families, including maybe even especially.
You notice how she's defending Democrats this entire interview. Byron Donalds counters it. She wants to interrupt them. She never has criticized the Democrats here, not one time. As a matter of fact, she's expressed frustration at her inability to defend Democrat and their radical, destructive policies.
Black families, but you also cannot ignore that there are a lot of statistics that suggest that Black Americans are doing well under Joe Biden, better than they were doing under Donald Trump. I want to ask you one last thing, because I know that this is actually happening.
Yeah, you don't want him to respond to that. He just told you that that's false. Inflation it basically trumps all of that. If you got to have 2 jobs, 3 jobs in order to keep going, they didn't want to say employment rate is good, unemployment rate is good. It's like, well, yeah, people got a bunch of different jobs to try to pay the same bills they could pay before with 1 job. Stop it, Abby.
We've learned that you are on the list, obviously, for VP candidates, and that you've received some vetting materials from the Trump campaign to be potentially a VP. Can you confirm that? And is there anything more you can tell us about how that process is going?
Well, I'm not going to confirm that right now. I had a conversation with the Trump campaign about that, and I'm going to leave that very private because they're going to go through their deliberations. President Trump's going to make a decision. I will say prices in America have been up over 20% since Joe Biden has taken office. That's hurting everybody. When prices are up 20%, trust me, Abby, go into the supermarket, go into the gas station, everybody is struggling. That is a fact. And that is why so many Americans, especially Americans who are minorities in this country, are leaving Joe Biden and the Democrats and looking towards Donald Trump and the Republicans.
All right. Congressman Byron Donalds, we appreciate you joining.
Had to hit her with the clap back because this fool is going to try to sit up here and act like this Joe Biden's economy is working out great for all Americans. Like, Abby, if you don't get your old lying ass, bro, look, man, these people make me so freaking sick, bro. Like, look, this is a hard video to watch, okay? And I'm going to have to watch it again. I got to edit this joker. Abby Phillip is just being totally insufferable. Y'all not MSNBC, okay? Y'all not all the way crazy. It's not gonna work, okay? It's not gonna work. It's not working. It certainly doesn't work against Byron Donalds, okay? Byron Donalds know what the hell he doing. He even said himself, like, look, you ain't about to play me. I'm a good communicator, so what's up? Keep on bringing them. I'm gonna keep on firing back at you. Like, what's up? Let's go. You know, this is one of the reasons I think he would probably be a good VP. He definitely holds his own strongly, and he got that sauce. But let me know what y'all think. I don't think Abby Phillip could keep up with him, but that's just me. Anyway, guys, so let me know what you think. Drop a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. I appreciate y'all watching the Black Anomaly Rising channel. I'm out.
Abby, you've been interrupting me the entire interview. I'm just trying to have a conversation.
I'm going to interrupt.
Shut the fuck up!